Ryan White, ladies and gentlemen. Ryan, can you tell the audience just a little bit about yourself?
For sure. So my name is Ryan White. I'm 28 years old. I'm from a small town called Lakeland, Georgia, and since last year, early June, I have recently now moved to Atlanta, Georgia, which is where I'm currently residing. I own a social media marketing company called Social Revelation, and we manage a little over 600 clients around the world.
And where did it all start for you? Being from a small town in Georgia, how did that affect you and your success today?
For sure. So, growing up, I was from a baseball background oriented family. I spent all of my time and energy surrounding baseball. So it was a lot of traveling, around with my father, who was my coach up and through my high school days. And, again, I just always being pushed, by my dad as my coach to kind of be the best version of myself, right? So very early on, I was always wanting to be better, right? To strive to kind of be the best that I could be to get the most out of life, so to speak. And so I feel like being competitive and being in the sporting world very early kind of got my mindset, in a position of, again, striving to be the best. And so I think that's correlated and moved over now into the career path that I've chosen. And so, yeah, man, it went from baseball to, my college baseball career ending. I got back in for a short stint into coaching and instruction. And then, again, I kind of journeyed my way, if you will, into entrepreneurship. And now here in 2019, we have Social Revelation.
And do you feel like baseball at all, or just your family characteristics shape the way you do business?
I would say a lot of it came from mentorships. Both my parents are at school are educators, right? So very early on, my dad's one of the hardest workers I know. He was the school athletic director, baseball coach, coached like middle school football, and so I mean he even drove a bus because he needed to do what he needed to do in order to to provide for the family. And so I remember him, very early on, he'd leave the house at 5:30 in the morning, literally to go drive a school bus, and then he's a school teacher during the day, and then he's at baseball practice in the evenings after that, and so we wouldn't get home or he wouldn't walk back through the door until sometimes 7, 8 o'clock at night, because even as athletic director, if there was a basketball game going on, he also had to go kind of make an appearance there. So I say all that to say he taught me what it meant to have a work ethic, and what it meant to work towards a better, common goal, if you will, and that obviously being to benefit our family. And so I do think that played into how I viewed working, just in general. But I think it was in entrepreneurship specifically, it was definitely having mentorships, right? Working on the personal development side of things and having people who had, basically were making the money that I wanted to make one day, because again, realistically, I wanted to make more than what my parents were making as educators working for the state, right? I always had high ambitions, even as, as early as 10 years, 12 years old. And so, again, I think mentorship, if you're wanting to kind of step into the CEO/entrepreneurship space, is a huge thing.
What was it like growing up in a small city such as where you were from? How did that affect you, just growing up and developing you into the person you are now?
Yeah, so coming from a small town, it's kind of bittersweet. Everyone's in everyone's business, but at the same time, for me, I kind of looked at it as it was a chance to get to know other people on a personal level. So I feel like my networking skills kind of came into play because naturally I did, want to get to know as many people as I could. And so I feel like coming from a small town kind of set me up from an advantage standpoint because I was able to have more meaningful, deep relationships than just kind of walking around LA and saying hi to people as I walk by them, and there's never really any deep human connection there.
And that explains the whole Southern hospitality that you have provided me with since the moment I met you. And I think that's a really essential part to building your business and the whole reason why you have so much success in Social Revelation.
Yeah, for sure, man. I definitely think that's played a role. I mean, again, humans thrive on connection. And, again, my upbringing had a huge, huge play in that. My mom always taught me that you only get one reputation, right? So you need to take care of it. And, I try to treat people the way that they want to be treated, right? So the golden rule we've always heard growing up is treat people how you want to be treated. But for me, it goes beyond that, because I heard someone say one time, you don't need to treat people how you want to be treated because sometimes that doesn't exactly line up with how they want to be treated. So for me, my golden rule is I want to treat people how they want to be treated. And so I think that's really kind of helped me get to the next level when it comes to cultivating relationships, especially in the business.
So speaking about golden rules, I know you have a few golden rules that you use daily in order to improve yourself, such as the ACTS rule and the 33% rule. How do you use these in order to effectively shape your identity?
For sure. That's a great question. And so for me, I work on my personal development every single morning. It's the first thing that I do when I wake up as part of kind of my morning routine. And so, again, it could come from a couple of different guys who I kind of would view as mentors. I think several of them came from Ed Mylett. I know several have come from Grant Cardone, the Tony Robbins and the Andy Frisellas of the world. I always try to give myself, at least 30 to 45 minutes every morning, kind of geared towards personal development. Matter of fact, when we talk about morning routines, I challenge you to go find someone who is truly successful, like a 7, 8-figure, 9-figure earner. And what you're going to find out is most of those people have a morning routine, and they are huge advocates for that because it provides structure and consistency into your life. And so, again, it's like if you want to learn how to, make the money that someone's making, you have to get around the people who are making that kind of money. And so I think that's kind of why I had such an issue with college, is because how was a college professor making 50, 60 grand a year going to teach me how to go make $1 million a year? That's like me trying to teach you how to play baseball, but I was a football player my entire life. It just doesn't add up. And so, again, if you are diving and investing, your time into personal development, like you take personal development very serious. As you said, you listen to podcasts and stuff while you're in the gym. That is huge because now you're exposing your mind to new information, right? So we as humans, what's crazy is, I heard this, Ed Mylett said it perfectly in one of his podcasts, but we're always changing. As humans, we actually lose our exoskeletons, or 10% of our exoskeletons every single year, right? So on a cellular level, we're constantly being replenished, right? Our digestive tracts actually cleanse itself every 4 days. And so, why do we learn so much and adapt so much, early on in school? It's because we're constantly exposed to new information, right? You're exposed to your new colors, new ABCs, history, geometry. And then eventually what happens is, people graduate, they decide they're done with education, right? They hated school. And so they go out into the workforce and they stop exposing themselves to new information, when it's actually that new information that allows you to grow and adapt as an individual. So, but for most people, somewhere along the lines of high school graduation at 18 to college graduation around, say 22, 23, we all buy into this idea that, hey, we don't need lifelong education, when in fact we do. And so it kind of almost stunts our growth and ability to go make large sums of money. So for someone like you and for me, where we wake up and we are constantly still exposing ourselves to new information from mentors like Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins, it allows our minds to basically take in that information through osmosis, right? If I plug myself in a circle of other 7, 8-figure earners, then naturally through osmosis, I am going to start thinking the way these people think. I'm going to pick up on the morning routines that these people have. I'm going to start learning to where to invest my money naturally, right, of where these big time earners are investing their money. And as I do that through a long enough period of time, I too look back and realize how far I've come in terms of success. And so I think personal development, man, is huge, and it's a must have if you're trying to better yourself and make a lot of money.
And it's exactly that one saying, what you think you become. And I think it's super important for most people to understand that, because if you keep constantly thinking about success, you're going to find success. You will raise your standards and be able to reach the area that you want to be at. And I think that's super cool that you even put the science behind it using Ed Mylett's little subject, or little, what's the word for it? His objective.
His analogy, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was super cool that you were able to put that in there. And you said you went to college as well. I know you got a bachelor's in accounting, it was, correct? Do you think that's helped you shape your business at all, having that background of accounting?
Let me say this, because that's kind of a fun subject. I have a younger brother who's going through college now, and so I don't ever want to deter anyone from going to college. I think it definitely serves its place in society. Because again, if you want to become a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, there is, you have to go down the college route in order to become that. So if that's your dream, that's what you want to do as far as a profession, I think that's great. For me personally, I will say I did take like some computer classes and some business classes when it comes to setting up the business side of things to be profitable and just learning how to, use Microsoft Office and stuff like that, which I use daily in my business. Yes, college was good for that. But from the standpoint of actual accounting, I would say, this degree, which is sitting right here on my wall, wasn't really worth the $40,000 to $50,000 that I owe in student loans. Probably not. If I had to go back based on my situation, just using the information that I have now, I probably would have jumped into entrepreneurship a lot earlier, probably straight out of high school, just knowing what I know now. Now, obviously, everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad that I have the degree because it does kind of give you this sense of security that you can always fall back on it if things were just to go crazy wrong. But, for me, man, I like to take my financial kind of security in my own hands versus relying on other people to provide it for me. And so I think that's why I have such a hard time with like being like my parents, and working for the state, being educators, because you just see time and time again in corporate America, man, there's mergers that happen all the time. People get laid off after 30-40 years, they lose their pension. And I just don't want to put all of that, because dude, I hate to say that money makes the world go round, but in 2019, the world that we live in, it truly does make the world go round. Like, we have to have money in order to operate and do the things and have the freedom that we want to have for most of us, right? And so I think of having the money as freedom points. I don't. It's not all about the money, but it is all about the freedom, right? So if I don't want to have someone telling me when I have to clock in, when I can clock out, when I have to go to lunch, when I have to be back from lunch, when I can go use the restroom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then I have to have a sufficient amount of money to be able to not go do those things, if that makes sense. So to go back to your original question, I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to college, because yes, I'm glad I have it. I think it's a great avenue for those people who need it. But for someone like me and my personality, I just think entrepreneurship fits my personality traits so well. And I think it fits you as well. Just in the little bit of time that I've gotten to know you, if you're success driven, if you're easily self-motivated, like if you're that guy in the gym who's like, hey man, I can go by myself, I can be consistent, and I can basically get results, and I don't need someone standing over me telling me every single thing what to do, then I think that kind of gives you a pretty good indicator that you may do well in entrepreneurship, because you have the self-discipline that it takes in order to go and make something successful happen.
And self-discipline is a trait that I think is super important in just anything you do, whether it's leadership, entrepreneurship, running your own business, whatever it is. I think a lot of people can use that, and that's something we use in the military and we drain into everybody in the military, is that self-discipline, the ability to go out and do things that you necessarily don't want to do, but do it because you know you got to do it, is going to make you progress and become a better person in the end. Do you think being self-disciplined shaped your image and your identity into who you are today?
100%. There's a saying that we throw around in entrepreneurship that nobody ever got rich or famous by staying inside their comfort zone, right? It's this feeling of getting outside of our comfort zone, which allows us to actually grow and develop. What's funny is there was a survey across the United States, and the number one fear in America is not death. It's actually public speaking, right? And we all have that fear of getting on stage and looking out and seeing thousands of people and speaking. I even have the same fear. Matter of fact, when I first started getting into doing media interviews, the podcast and the TV shows, there was a fear there for me, right? I'd never done that before. Matter of fact, I think we had a discussion. Second interview I ever did in my life was Entrepreneurs on Fire, right? Which gets over 1 million downloads a month. Of course, I had, I was uncomfortable going through that situation, but I knew in order to get to where I wanted to go, I had to go through that, right? And so I knew I had to get outside of my comfort zone in order to basically be sitting where I am now in 2019. And so the next step is I'm starting, this summer, early fall, to get into public speaking, because people are starting to reach out now going, hey man, we've listened to your podcast. We've seen you on live television. we love the way, that you speak and the way you inspire. Would you be interested in motivational speaking? We'd love to have you. And so for me, first thought in my mind is like every person, yes, you can do so many interviews on a podcast like this and even on live television. That was a totally different comfort thing that I had to go through, where I was super nervous about. And you go through that, and I'm having to go through that again with the public speaking. But my goal by the end of this year is to get on stage more. And so, it's just something that I feel like we all have to face. We all have to face adversity, and we're better because of it.
Yeah, and I would personally love to see you on like a TEDx episode or something like that. And I'm sure that's something you'd want to eventually go down, or that avenue one day, which would be pretty cool.
It's funny you say that, man. I've actually had a company that reached out and asked if I wanted to do a TED Talk. It was actually about 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, and again, because I haven't done the public speaking, it's kind of like I at least needed one episode before I went on to Entrepreneurs on Fire. You know what I mean? Like I have to have one speaking event where I do something maybe locally before I go do a TED Talk. And so, it's stepping stones. And so the reality is, even me sitting here, 7-figure earner, driving the cool car, having the 600 clients, I still have my own things personally that I deal with. You know what I mean? And like doing a TED Talk, I actually turned that down because I felt like I wasn't adequately prepared or ready to go and do that. Now, in hindsight, I'm starting to prepare that journey, so it will eventually happen. Like I said, I'm doing a local event here in Atlanta. I think it's going to be July or August where I'm actually getting on stage and doing my first event with like 500 people. Okay, so at least having that experience that I can draw from will give me a lot more comfort to say yes when the TED Talk thing comes back around, because it will. If it come around, 3 to 4 months ago, it'll definitely make its way back around, within the next 12 months, I'm certain. So, but my point is no matter where you are on your journey, because we all start at different stages, we all still have to face adversity every single day. I'm sure Grant Cardone, he may not mention this live on his show, but I'm sure he still has situations in which he's uncomfortable, but he just fights through it because he has to.
And there's so many people just see what the media side or the social media aspect has. They don't really know the struggles that the person's going through. And I think that's super important to understand and to look at, is that people don't always post their failures on Instagram or social media. They usually just post their successes. But as for you, I'm sure you've gone through a ton of trial and error and failures in order to get to where you are today.
100%, man. Yeah, I was just like everyone else. I do think that there's that misconception out there because, again, you do portray, your lifestyle online and through social media and digital platforms a certain way. So you are perceived a certain way. And I feel like for me, people kind of seen me growing up, like I was very successful in baseball, right? Enough, obviously, to go play at the collegiate level. And then when that ended, I had an opportunity very young to where I stepped into coaching and instruction, and I'm making $60,000 a year, 23, 24 years old. It just kind of happened very quickly. And, again, coming from a town where the median income, was $30,000 a year and I'm making double that, less than 25 years old, people always kind of assume like everything he touches just works. And, but that can never happen for me. He's lucky, right? Or he's just blessed, whatever the reason may be. And then they see, after I step out of the baseball world, the next thing you know, within 18 months, they're like, now he's running a social media marketing company. He's making 7 figures a year driving this car. Like, I don't get it, but that can't happen again for me. Obviously, I don't know what's going on here, but he must just be blessed or the lucky one. But the reality is, if we go back far enough, and we did discuss some of the lows. When I graduated college, dude, I don't know if you heard this on one of my other interviews, but I was working at Tennessee State Bank. I had $40,000, $50,000 in student loan debt. I had a bachelor's in accounting. I'm making $11 an hour. I absolutely hated going into work, man. I hated where I was at. I felt super unfulfilled. I was 400 miles away from my house. I was kind of still too prideful to even want to move back in with my parents. And so, being away for 5 years. And so, I transitioned obviously out of that situation, moved back home. So that was like low number one. Low number two was once I got into the baseball world and instruction again, I actually had 2 different kind of entrepreneurship ventures that didn't really work out so well, right? The first one, I'm even embarrassed to say, bro, but at one time I was actually selling with my aunt doTERRA oils. in a personal, like, local boutique there. So I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, it was like my first taste, because I started I kind of find it funny because it was like my first taste of wanting to do something different, though. Like, my ambition was growing. I wanted to make a side income somewhere. So my mind was starting to turn on how can I create more money. And so my first thought, again, I was actually selling doTERRA oils, brother, in a local boutique in Warner Robins, Georgia, with my aunt. And I laugh about it now, but that was like my very first take in entrepreneurship. Number two was I had this great idea that I was going to spread positivity through motivational quotes and all through social media, through Instagram specifically. And I was going to create a company that would basically go around rec departments around the state of Georgia. We were going to sponsor kids, and we were going to have this huge layout where we were basically just spreading positivity and like hanging motivational banners in all the dugouts across Georgia and the Southeast. And when I went back and I looked at the business model, again, didn't really work out. That also too was a failure. So I kind of had two failures before, like on the side that nobody, again, was exposed to before Social Revelation happened, and then we took off the way that we did. So I actually had, if you really want to count Tennessee State Bank in there as like an unsuccessful, event that happened as well, I really had three failures before I ever got to the Social Revelation one that actually took off and is now, giving me the lifestyle that I live now.
But those experiences, I mean, as far as growing up, your dad being your coach, the experiences when you were in college, going to work at the bank with your aunt at the boutique, and all those stuff kind of shaped your identity into who you are. I know you talk about providing an image on social media in order to boost your brand awareness, create your digital footprint, and really having a clear image. How does your identity or somebody's purpose tie in to adding your image into your brand?
For sure. So, the biggest thing I tell people that come on as clients is you do have to know how you want to be perceived. You can't start making and implementing changes until you know what it is that you want to be viewed as, right? So once I know that I want to be viewed as basically the social media expert, the go-to guy within the digital marketing space, who has a successful agency with over 600 clients, as someone who's a seven-figure earner. Once I know that, so here I am, right? I'm at square one. If I know where I want to be at square 10 down here, I can start to kind of backtrack all the way back to position number one, and that kind of gives me the storyline and what I need to do in order to get to square 10 again, if that makes sense. So once I had the vision and I could see myself in that position, then it was really just, putting the stones in place on the way to get there. And so what I mean by that is I started to go out and do all the things that I know I needed to do in order to cultivate that appearance. So what are those things? Okay, well, I knew I needed a bigger audience. So that was specifically, because that's kind of my bread and butter. And then number two, I knew I had to be perceived as a professional. So if you go back far enough on my Instagram, you're going to see the Alabama hair swoop even that I had when I was in construction. I had to change my haircut. I mean, I know that sounds very basic and small, but I remember even my friends when I started doing my hair like this, bro, they were, the haters come out. When you start making changes, positive changes in your life, if you're not getting some form of hate, bro, that means you're not making a big enough change. Because people were even hating on, man, why are you wearing your hair like that? The craziest thing ever, right? But it changed my image drastically. When I go back and I look, I see young boy here with the Alabama swoop, and I see business professional here with what I do now. Now, you may choose to agree or not agree, but from over the last 2 years making that change, I know how the market has responded to the new image, and it's been well. Look at the first thing they did to Justin Bieber, right? I know that's funny, but look at the first thing they did to him when they brought him, and exposed him to America. They took his swoop, boom, new hairstyle. Now it's all of a sudden it's the album cover, right, of his very first album that he dropped. Is him with his new hairstyle, all slicked back. Next thing you know, everyone else is doing it. So I had to change my appearance. Also, that included I never owned a suit in my life. Guess what? I had to go out. It was time for me to go purchase a suit. Okay, the suit I have in the car picture that everyone talks about on my Instagram, my profile picture. I didn't have that suit. I was actually going on Good Morning LA back in December. Did not own a suit. I actually had to go to Men's Warehouse and buy a custom tailored suit, and I spent good money on it. I actually had to buy two of them because I was going on another interview 2 weeks after, and I couldn't wear the same suit. And so my point is I had to start doing all of these things in order to be perceived the way that I do now. To eventually, you know, I know we hate to say it. I had always had an aspiration to own a six-figure car. That was kind of like my business has gotten to a point where I want to reward myself, because what's the point in making money if you can't stop to appreciate where you've come? You know what I mean? And so
Of course.
those that know me know I'm very conservative when it comes to budget and things of that nature. And then of course my wife's quick to tell me, well, what about your car? Well, the car is kind of something that I did, as again just a pat on my back so that I can appreciate it, to go and replicate those results again over the next 2 years. But once I got the car drastically helped again my image of how I wanted to be perceived, right? So if we go through and we're making a checklist, it's as simple as I had to know where I wanted to be, right? And so I started to basically change my hairstyle. I bought a suit. I got the car that kind of fits with the lifestyle. I went and I had to start in cultivating press pieces. So I got involved in digital PR. Then I got involved in the media interviews. So I started reaching out to people very early on. I never did a podcast interview until November of 2018. So think about that for a second. November 2018 was the first podcast interview I ever did. Okay. I told you Entrepreneurs on Fire was the second one I ever did. That episode dropped like early December, like first week of December. So I shot that, or we filmed and recorded that in November. So I've done over 40 shows. I've done over 40 interviews since November of 2018, and we're sitting here April 2019. So I was doing like 2 to 3 episodes a week. So when I'm the kind of guy, when I get involved, I go full force. Like I'm either not doing it or I'm doing it 100%. And so I started scheduling 2 to 3 a week. I was reaching out to anyone and everyone who would have me, until eventually I started, as I started to kind of develop all of these shows, I was reaching out to bigger shows, and then I started landing some of the bigger ones. Then my press pieces, I started to kind of get some audience or get some awareness there, right? I had press pieces dropping. Next thing you know, I applied to Forbes Agency Council. I got accepted. Everything started to fall in place. Okay, pitched to TV interview people, Good Morning LA, Park City Television in Utah. Got a yes to both of those. And you can kind of see how through massive action, as Grant Cardone says, I started to cultivate this picture of what you see when you go to my Instagram at Ryan White, about that fast. And so, that's kind of, it was built very, very, very quickly within about an 18 to 24 month period.
That's interesting that you had to change your whole mindset and your whole lifestyle in order to shape your image and your identity of who you are. But moving on to your business, Social Revelation. What was the process on building the business? Where did it all start? How did you learn how to be in the whole digital marketing aspect of creating a 7-figure business?
For sure. So, I was working for the baseball company at the time, and I was the youngest guy in the office for this particular organization. So naturally, they put me over the social media marketing aspect of the company. I was kind of trial and error in my way to doing some things with them. Started getting some pretty good results, and then I figured, hey, if I can do this, for them, why can't I replicate those results for myself? And so I said, well, let's find out. And so it got to a point to where when I would get done with baseball lessons around 8, 9 p.m., I would go spend, say 10 o'clock at night, to about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, studying a lot of people who were killing it on social media and kind of taking some of the things that were working for them, putting my own spin on it, and trying to see how I can make it even better and personalize for me specifically. So it was a lot of research and studying people who are already killing it. But, trial and error has a huge play into that. And so I played around with this stuff probably for about 3 to 6 months, until eventually one day I kind of navigated my way into coming across something that was growing my personal brand, like 10,000 new followers per month. And naturally that started to create a lot of attention, right? Where people were reaching out to me asking, hey, can you also do this for me and my business? Can you help me? And so of course I wanted to know if I could. So I started basically just saying yes. I was just saying yes to everyone. And what I found out was I was able to pretty much replicate the same results for people across various niches and geolocations around the world. And so kind of what I was doing was I was taking everyone that I had worked with, and I was putting them inside this Telegram group, right? Telegram's an app. It's kind of the black market, if you will, for social media. And I was putting them in this group. And again, after kind of that 6-month period, I had realized I had over 100 individuals in this group. And so I was like, wow, obviously there's value here. There's demand here. We should probably, start a business. And so it was in that moment where I actually started thinking about names. And then I went out and actually trademarked the Social Revelation name.
So through trial and error or problem solving, you started to create momentum with your business, Social Revelation. Did you ever reach any dark points or dark areas of when you started Social Revelation?
I say that, the business kind of fell into my lap, and it was meant to be, because from the moment I got started with it, it kind of just took off, honestly. And so it's like once you find that honey hole, you kind of know there's something there, because I had been down this path 2 times before with different ideas, right? But I'd never experienced the traction as early on as I did with Social Revelation, as I did with those businesses. And so, I knew very early on that if I put in enough time and energy, the demand was already there. So if I could just focus on delivering results, I knew that there was potential for it to turn into something that was big. And so in the moment that I knew that our product was good enough to be sold at a decent price point, the moment that I knew that I wanted to kind of move into this full time, and the moment I knew I had people who were willing to pay for that price point, because it was deemed as valuable, was when I started moving into phase 2, to where I started to go out and seek partnership agencies to basically go and white label our services. And that was really when we started to kind of scale in terms of client volume.
And what was your mindset during the whole thing? I mean, you probably were trying to add as much value to your customers, your clients, as well as trying to learn through the whole process and grow their marketing and their branding just exponentially. What was the whole mindset during that?
For sure. It started out originally, I was just having fun with it. And then once it moved from kind of a fun side hobby into, hey, this is a business, I started to focus on, like you said, delivering as much value as I could. Obviously, that was number one. Number two was just really, if you see our tagline, it's Social Revelation, where family connects business. Because again, being from the South, I was more focused on relationships than mass volume. So I think when I started talking to people, it was cultivating relationships. It was really letting people know that I cared about them and their results. I wasn't just taking their money. I was genuinely more concerned with getting them results and then kind of letting them be a part of the Social Revelation family, that I think people really started to feel kind of at home with me. And that was when I started to separate myself, because of that family atmosphere I was trying to create, my customer service was exceptional, to where even today, most of my clients have my personal cell phone number. Now, I get to a point where I have to tell them, hey, I have 2 personal assistants. Let them be your first line of contact. But in the very first year, where I had no employees and I was doing 100% of everything, every single client had my personal cell phone number, and I was handling, as the CEO founder, 100% of all of it, because it was my first business venture. Someone who has 8 companies would go, hey, listen, that's probably not how you build a business. You want to build the foundation first and put in employees and stuff so that you can scale. But being my first business, I was just hustling the whole thing, to be honest with you. And so, yeah, man, I was 100% by myself, just trying to drive value, cultivate a family atmosphere, give extreme, an exceptional customer support. And it was kind of through all of that which got me off the ground, because everyone was just so happy, man. It was a positive environment. And so everyone wanted to tell everybody. And it was through the power of referrals and those partner agencies that just really, scaled it exponentially.
Wow. And it worked for you too. What you're doing essentially is you're building trust with your customers, building relationships with your customers, and they choose you instead of somebody else, which has obviously showed that it's working. Do you think you've grown as a person? Do you think you've grown as a person through it, or?
100%, 100%. As you connect with people on more of a personal level, and you genuinely care about people and their success, it changes you, right? It's gratifying. It's a humbling experience. What's cool about it is most people that I associate with and are a client of SR, they know they can text me, and unless it's like the weekend where I'm out with my family, they're going to know within 24 hours they're going to get a response from me. And they know that, and they value that. But they also, they're humans too. They do respect my time. If it gets out of line and you're like obviously blowing me up outside of hours, like 10, 11 o'clock at night, there are parameters that I have to kind of put in play. But again, it's nothing for me to have those conversations with people saying, hey, listen, it's Sunday night at 10 o'clock, but if you'll text me tomorrow, during business hours, I'd be happy to get you a response or get you an answer. And people respect that. But, I heard from Grant Cardone as well. He talks about, setting price points and whatnot. And he's like, man, hey, one of his things is I'm aware that I sell the same service as my competitors and at a premium price. He goes, but the reason that it works is because you can go down the street and pay a cheaper price, but you don't get me. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
if you position your personal branding and your customer service in a way that we do, and I tell people all the time, because I do have conversations with people, same way that Grant does. Hey, listen, I know you can go down the street and you could probably go work with company ABC for $30 a month. That's cheaper than what we can offer the same thing for, but you're not going to get me and you're not going to get our team, which is trained to provide exceptional customer service for you.
So you're inspiring many people through your business social revelation. And in a course of a year, you have grown it to a 7-figure business, which is absolutely crazy. Now, I'm just curious, do you have any testimonials or stories of maybe people from back home or just in general that you have provided excellent service through social revelation too?
For sure, man. I get 100 DMs on Instagram every day. A lot of people will send custom videos, telling me how much they appreciate the time I take to do the interviews because they get value from it, in their daily gym sessions or whenever they do their personal development. And it's pretty cool to see, if I go and I have a meaningful conversation, we have people that'll screenshot the conversation, put it on their story and stuff. And so, I've had a couple of times where I've put in literally, I call them like fan testimonials, but it's just super cool because people that do take the time to send me like a video testimonial of how much I've impacted their life. I've actually taken that video clip and uploaded it to my IGTV because I want people to see, and be able to see that if you do invest into personal development, not even, it doesn't necessarily even have to be my shows, but just anyone's shows, that it truly can impact and change your life. And so it's just humbling to hear that I can be that guy or that mentor or that person that someone looks up to, like I look up to Grant and Ed Mylett and some of these others. And so, the gratification you get from that, is far more meaningful and value than anything else to me that I could be doing. And so I really feel for the first time in my life, I'm doing what I was called to do. So
we have a motto with Leave on Impact, and it is called Learn, Grow, Inspire. And you are a perfect example of Learn, Grow, Inspire because you are learning. That's how you started. You started to learn, and then you grew through the process, and then you went to the very peak, which is inspiring, which is where you want to be. You want to be able to inspire others. And it obviously shows through your business, Social Revelation, how you have impacted just so many lives through it. And it goes to show that if you follow your passions, you will find a way to make it work for you, and the money will come to you just for you just following your passions and putting great intention behind it.
Yeah, 100%, man. They say follow the passion and you never have to work a day in your life. And that's a reality, because when you're passionate about something, you don't see it as work. I feel like that's why a lot of entrepreneurs honestly work, 12 to 14 to 16 hours a day, and they don't even blink. Because, even for me in those early days, that first year where I was taking on the full workload, I remember people looking at me saying, man, you're a workaholic. How do you work in, 14, 16 hours a day? And the reality is because I didn't see it as work. I saw it as I'm changing lives. I'm doing something I'm passionate about. Like I would do this even if I wasn't getting paid, because think about it. When you start any business, you're not immediately getting paid. So in essence, you are doing it without getting paid. And so my whole thing is if you are passionate about it, you're going to want to invest more time into it. And because you invest more time into it, you're going to get better results, which generally are impacting people and making more money. And so, find the passion, find the money.
And it's awesome you did that through your business, Social Revelation. Do you think it was easy at any point?
No, I don't think it's ever easy because, we all have our own reservations about why we don't get started with our own things. And a lot of that, I've talked about before is we have a false sense of security from, a consistent paycheck. A lot of people really, really like structure. They like the idea of being able to clock in and clock out as a job and knowing they have Saturday, Sunday, and weekends off. A lot of people like the stability of that. Um, and then again, when I ask people too, hey, why don't you get started in your own thing? I've heard everything, under the sun, but probably the main one I hear is, well, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks or the first of every month, and I can't just turn away from that. And the reality is you don't necessarily have to. I'll say point number one, it's a false sense of security, because the reality is you're working for someone else. They could lay you off at any time. So why not go and spend your energy creating something that's yours that can't necessarily, if it's built the right way and you diversify, be taken away from you, right? And you're going to be way more fulfilled making $20,000 a year and it's yours than making $40,000 a year and being told what to do and how to live your life and getting 2 weeks of vacation time per year. But also for me, understand that, you don't necessarily just have to full force quit, and also while also trying to cultivate something. Right now, you're cultivating an audience through podcasting while, working for the Air Force. Whereas with me, I had a full-time job as a baseball coach instructor when I cultivated the Social Revelation audience base as well. And it was in the moment of December 2018 when I realized that my business had now gotten to a point where I was making just as much money as my full-time job. So the moment my part-time side hustle, right, provided the same amount of revenue as my full-time gig, I knew in that moment that it was time for me to go all in on what I was passionate about. And so I think I said December 2018, but it was December 2017 when I made that realization. And so January 2018 last year was actually the first full fiscal year where I said, okay, we're going all in with Social Revelation, and here we go. And now here we are, April 2019.
Wow. And that's crazy how you did it all in a year, because so many people are just like, oh, I want to get money fast. And that everybody knows making money fast really isn't a thing. It kind of doesn't happen for many people. But it's crazy that you pursued your passions. You went full force. One thing you've told me is that you don't put one foot in the door, one foot out ever. You always are either in or all out. And I think that's super cool that you have shaped yourself and shaped your mindset into being the hardest worker in the room. And it obviously shows. But as far as today and who you are today, do you think networking and going with other people in your field of business and entrepreneurship has shaped who your business is today, or does it necessarily grow who you are today?
For sure. I wouldn't be here where I was if it wasn't for networking, because again, developing the power of the partnerships that I went out and built to even allow it to scale the way that it did involve networking. So networking is a huge play. It's so important that you kind of put yourself around people who think the way that you do. And, going back to the 33% rule that we talked about, you have to have people not only on your same level to bounce ideas off of, but you have to have people also above you that you can basically draw knowledge and again, new information from, who are already sitting in the seat that you want to sit in. And so, yeah, when it comes to networking, it's a huge part of the success formula. A lot of people don't realize this, but everything in life has a formula. It's proven if you want to lose 15 pounds, you basically burn more calories, take in, less calories than you're burning every day, and you can lose the weight, right? And of course, I'm not a fitness health expert, and I'm sure it gets a little more extensive, but my point for this reference is there's a couple elements in the formula to lose weight, right? The same thing can be said though for success. And so, how do we find out what are inside those things? It's very simple. You go find successful people, you put them all in a box, and you study them. And then we write out what are the common similarities that the people have. And what you're going to find is, if you have a morning routine, if you're being consistent, if you're investing in personal development, if you're surrounding yourself with the people who are making the money you want to make, all of those things fit inside this formula, which will in turn lead you to success. So I'm a huge believer in anyone can be successful. Just go study, that formula as in depth as you can and start doing those things daily, consistently. And what you'll find out is you too will look back in 6 months to 12 months and you'll have basically achieved just as much success as I did.
And I agree It's exactly what we were talking about earlier. What you think is what you become. But with it, you have to surround yourself with a positive environment. If you are with negative people, you're going to get negative results. And I think people don't notice that if you're with garbage, you become garbage. It's garbage in, garbage out is what Zig Ziglar says. And it makes so much sense. And it obviously shows. And it's crazy that you have so much knowledge in the whole self-development realm just from networking and experience building and all this stuff that you have.
I appreciate it. And what's crazy is, when I was doing the private baseball instruction side of things, I wasn't doing the personal development side of things the way, I had the whole 9 to 5 mindset like everyone else. So my point is, it's never too late. Now obviously the earlier you figure it out, the better, because you have that many more days that you can learn. But the reality is, 18 months ago was when I very first started buying into personal development, and I've kind of gotten to where I am now within less than 2 years. And so I'm super stoked, because what's the next 25 to 30 years going to look like for me?
And you're 28, correct?
Correct.
Do you wish that you started your business Social Revelation a lot earlier, like at the age of 18, 19 or so?
100%. Yeah. Knowing what I know now and where social media was, if I would have started this company back when I was 18, 19, instead of like going and pursuing the accounting degree. Now, obviously I went on a baseball scholarship, so my mindset was a little bit different at that age. And so I do think it played out the way it should have. But the reality is, if I would have started this at 18, 19, my business would be 10x what it is right now for sure, because the barriers to entry were so much less. Like, there were a lot less players back when I was 18, 19 than are now at, me at 28 years old.
And you could start at any age too. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, is that there's almost like no rules when it comes to entrepreneurship. Gary Vee talks about it all the time, that you can literally make money off anything. There's this girl who makes money off just posting pictures of bread on her face. And just like the egg the other day or a few months ago, who broke the world record, he's monetizing off of that. And I think it's super essential to people to understand at a young age that you can make money in really anything you're doing. And it's just the whole success mindset that people need to be able to display and learn.
For sure. I tell people all the time, you can go make a living selling apples right here on the side of the street. If you take the mindset into, I'm going to provide, the best customer service. Anytime someone, pulls up in a car, I'm going to go open the door. I'm going to serve them the apple. I'm going to go close the door. Right. And then not only that, but I'm going to provide the best apples around town. But just through the best product, right, that I can get my hands on and providing the best customer support ever, I could go make a living standing on the side of the road selling apples 100%, because it's all mindset. It has nothing to do with the product. People will pay for customer service every day.
That's a perfect example. As well as going into a little bit more of today. Recently, you just got married. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's a huge stepping stone, huge milestone. That is awesome. Do you think your wife has shaped you into who you are today and how your business is ran today? Has she put in any characteristics into who you are and who you are shaped into?
For sure. She played a big role. I tell people all the time that, I married her for all the right reasons. She married me for all the right reasons. Reason being, because I didn't even have the name Social Revelation picked out, honestly. She goes all the way back to before that was even finalized, so she's been there literally since square one. She was there taking pictures of me standing next to, the doTERRA oil stand in the boutique back in those days. So she's been there. So she was with me when I had not a lot of money. I didn't even have $10,000 in the bank. And so, it was super cool because we fell in love, back in those days. So, I always knew she was with me because of who I was as a person, and she's been with me, guiding me through this whole process to keep me grounded, keep me humbled. I couldn't ask for a better spouse when it comes to supporting me and what I do. Very early on, I could elaborate, but it would take a while. But just know, very early on, we did have kind of like some bumps in the road with Social Revelation. And she kind of took control of that whole situation and got me back on the right path just mentally. And, because honestly, I was like, I don't really know if I can do this, because this is going to be my third failure. And she pretty much stepped in and was like, hey, no, you were born to do this. You were made to do this. And she got me on the right path, man. And now here we are, 2019, and it's been a huge blessing.
So she really 10x's you. It seems like it.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
you don't see that a lot in relationships, and growth is very essential in both relationships and who you want to become. And it's awesome that she's able to constantly help you grow in both your relationships and in your business. So that's super nice to have. But the Ryan White today versus the Ryan White then, what is the difference? How do you think you've grown since Ryan White playing baseball compared to Ryan White today as a seven-figure entrepreneur?
I think I've changed in terms of just, valuing relationships more. I truly, on this scale, being able to impact lives, change lifestyles, that sort of thing, is way more gratifying than anything. Back when I was playing ball, yeah, baseball is a team sport, but I still feel like baseball is also very business oriented. Look at anything with the MLB, and if you don't perform at a certain level, guess what? You get traded or you get cut and the career's over. So I feel like in those days I was so focused on me bettering myself, right? Me bettering my statistics. So, I'm not going to say I was a terrible team player, because I definitely cared about my friends and my team and winning as a team. So don't get me wrong there, but I was still very focused on, just me, always trying to boost and rank up. Whereas now, once you reach a certain level of income, it's like, what else do you need? What else do I need to go and buy? I already have a cool car, which is fine. It's just a car, but like, I don't need a second and a third and a fourth car. So now it's transitioned from what impact am I truly having on other people? The same way that I scaled my business in 18 months, I love to get testimonies about other people who have also scaled their business to what I have done in 18 months. Those stories will be what I'll tell my kids one day, not what I was doing or how many home runs I hit on a field back in 2012. That doesn't matter. So I feel like I've grown up, if you will. I've matured a lot. I think getting married again and taking that relationship seriously and having Nadia in my life, I think just over the last 2 to 3 years, man, I've scaled up so much as a man. I look back at myself at 25, still as a young boy. You know what I mean? Still needing to learn some things, and I feel like now at 28, moving on to 29, I'm a lot more well-rounded. I care a lot more about other people. I genuinely want to give back and do good into the world, and I feel like I have the right person standing next to me and my wife to go and really make a difference.
And you are impacting people through your business, Social Revelation, and just being you, Ryan White. And I personally look up to you as a entrepreneur, a marketer, a businessman, and I really appreciate that.
So. I appreciate it, man. That's super humbling to hear you say, and that's awesome, man. I hope I can keep delivering you value.
To recap it all, we talked about finding your identity, your business, and how you grew your business from a startup to a seven-figure business in just the course of a year. Is there anything you would like to tell the intended audience who wants to be the next entrepreneur, or just anything that you have on your mind?
I'll just say, when it comes to entrepreneurship, if you're thinking about it, take the initial leap of faith. I think the rewards that come from entrepreneurship is well worth the risk that's involved. You're going to be way happier again, even if it's making $10,000, the first year, that $10,000 you make is going to be worth way more than making a six-figure income for someone else. I never really understood why restaurants always frame the first dollar bill that they make on the wall until I launched my first business. And so now I 100% get it. And I'll just say too, a lot of what we do mentally is about manufacturing momentum, like you said. And I'll leave you with like a baseball analogy, but because I was a baseball guy, I heard as well in my personal development, when it comes to baseball, the offensive bats, right, they're not always hot. You're not always going to be hitting doubles, hitting home runs. But in those moments, the goal from hitting a home run, it transforms into, we just have to get a runner on first base. So the whole mindset changes, right? And then once they do get the runner on first base, no longer are they trying to hit the long ball, but what do you see? You see someone trying to sacrifice bunt that runner and move him, advance him to the next base. Okay, and so because it gets so important now for that runner to move from first base to second base, and then again switching from the home run mindset into the sacrificial mindset and developing momentum, moving that runner again to third base and then eventually across home plate, just moving the score, from 0-0 to 1-0 puts that team in such a better position to win, right? To be successful in that event. And so I just say, try to figure out, if the bats aren't always hot, right? If things aren't clicking and your business isn't taking off right now to 6 figures to 7 figures, figure out how you can sacrifice momentum, right? Just generate the momentum, because again, just sometimes getting hit by a pitch, right? Or dropping a button on the third baseline and getting to first base is so impactful to moving the runner across home plate. And so I think sometimes we got to take a step back, and we got to always realize that we're not going to hit a long ball, but we can still score, if that makes sense.
And it's just little steps to get there. And Ryan, thank you so much for coming out to the show. It is truly appreciated. Guys, go check him out at officialryanwhite.com. You can also check him out at Social Revelation. Go check out what he has to offer. He is a great guy, so please go ahead and check him out. Thank you, Ryan. Again, thank you. It is much appreciated.
You're very welcome, man. I appreciate you for having me. And if you want to connect with me, my website is just officialryanwhite.com. You can check me out on Instagram at Ryan White, and we'd love to hear from anyone who reaches out.